I have to keep running! Keep running! There's no way out! Help me! Help!
The sky wasn't just glowing, it was bleeding. Across the forest, flames twisted upward like giant serpents, their bodies coiling through the treetops as if they meant to swallow the land whole. The air split with heat, ash drifted down like black snow, and in the middle of that chaos, Jarra ran. "Fire used to be our teacher," he said later, his voice still shaking, but that night it became something else. Families sprinted through smoke, clutching children close as they fled the inferno. The town's wooden pier collapsed into fiery water with a scream of crackling timber, and a bridge split in half as if even trust itself had broken under the pressure. A mother shouted for her child. A firefighter threw his jacket over an elderly man to shield him from sparks. Then a wall of flames roared forward, unstoppable, swallowing trees, fences, and hope alike. For a moment, everything went silent. And then, as if the fire had finally burned through sound itself, faint ember sparks drifted upward and arranged themselves into the title, glowing softly against the darkness. When morning came, it arrived quietly, almost nervously, as though it feared disturbing what remained. Smoke still hung over the ruins like pale ghosts, and the once busy main street had become a skeleton of twisted metal, shattered glass, and blackened earth. Jarra walked slowly through the remains of his hometown, his boots sinking into ash that used to be memory, laughter, and home. He stopped beside a fallen eucalyptus tree and placed his hand on its scorched bark. Instantly, he remembered being a boy again, walking these same lands with his grandfather. Back then, the old man had taught him something sacred, cool burning, a gentle fire that cleaned the undergrowth without destroying the forest. Those lessons, once full of life, now felt painfully distant, swallowed by the inferno that had taken everything. Across the rubble, Maya crouched beside a collapsed fence, carefully collecting soil samples with trembling hands. As an environmental scientist, she had spent years studying the growing intensity of Australia's bushfires, tracking heat, wind, and fuel buildup on maps and satellite screens. Yet now, standing in the ruins, she was forced to face the truth that science alone might not be enough if the land itself had been forgotten. And so, in the wreckage of the same disaster, Jarra and Maya stood in silence, two people who had lost different things to the same fire. Not far away, in the ruins of the old community hall, a lone candle flickered against the wind. It was small, fragile, and easily overlooked, yet it refused to go out. In that tiny flame, the first spark of hope remained. Years earlier, before the smoke and sorrow, Jarra had walked beside his grandfather through a quiet stretch of bushland where sunlight poured through the leaves like threads of honey. The old man moved slowly, tapping the soil with his stick, listening carefully to the land as though it spoke in whispers only he could hear. Ahead of them, small, controlled flames danced low and gentle, almost playful, licking through dry grass without biting into the trees. "A forest is like hair," his grandfather had said, guiding Jarra's hand toward the soft glow. "Trim it softly, or it tangles and burns wildly." Around them, birds hopped fearlessly near the embers, pecking at insects stirred by the warmth. Kangaroos grazed along the edge of the clearing, calm and undisturbed. Every movement seemed part of a larger rhythm, people, animals, soil, and flame moving together in balance, each respecting the other. But then, as the warm colors faded from memory, the scene shifted. New maps arrived, fences went up, policies changed. The land, once carefully tended, was left heavy with dry fuel. The old ways were dismissed as outdated, and the knowledge passed from elders to children began to slip away.
When Jarra opened his eyes in the present, nostalgia turned into a painful realization. The fire had not only burned the forest, it had also burned the bond between the people and the land. A few days later, the town gathered in a temporary council hall made from a corrugated metal shed. Inside, the air felt thick enough to cut with a knife. Residents sat shoulder to shoulder, some with soot still in their hair, all carrying frustration like a second skin. Their voices rose and collided off the walls. "We need more fire trucks, more suppression teams. We fight the fires head on," one man insisted. But a woman across the room shook her head. "Those indigenous methods, they're outdated. Look what just happened." Maya stood near the projector, arms folded tight across her chest. She looked exhausted, and when she spoke, her tone was sharp. "Small fires won't stop destruction like this, not anymore." Then Jarra arose from the back of the room. He did not shout, he did not need to. His calm voice cut through the tension like a steady line through smoke. A heavy silence followed, sharper than any flame. Behind them, a mural stretched across the wall, showing the town's history in bright painted scenes, celebrations, harvests, children running under the trees. Yet the mural was cracked straight down the middle, and the damage from the blaze ran through it like a wound. The symbolism was impossible to miss. The fire had not only split the land, it had split families, cultures, and trust. Then a firefighter stepped forward, holding the latest weather alerts in one hand and a tablet in the other. Her face was grim. "We don't have time for division," she warned. "Another severe season is coming, worse than the last." At that, the room changed. Anger gave way to worry. Worry turned to dread, and suddenly everyone understood that the town was no longer just recovering, it was running out of time. So Jarra did what his grandfather would have done. He invited Maya into the bush. Deep among the trees, where the forest still carried scars from the last inferno, he led her to a patch of dry grasses and knelt. Without ceremony, he struck a small flame. It moved gently across the ground, weaving through the vegetation like a thin orange thread stitching the earth back together. Maya crouched beside him, thermometer in hand. "So low?" she murmured, surprised as she watched the temperature remain stable. The heat barely touched the surface, and the nearby canopy stayed green and breathing. Wallabies watched from the shade, while birds perched on nearby branches without fear. There was no chaos here, no towering smoke wall, no frantic flight, only a careful, purposeful burn. "You burn to save, not to destroy," Maya whispered, her eyes widening with understanding. Jarra nodded. "Fire listens," he said, "when you speak its language." From that moment on, the two of them began to work side by side. Maya unfolded risk maps marked with fuel buildup zones, wind corridors, and high threat areas. Jarra added the things maps could not always show: seasonal wind shifts, animal movement trails, moisture pockets, and the old pathways his grandfather had taught him to read long ago. And because each brought something the other lacked, they began to shake a plan together. They proposed controlled fuel reduction corridors that followed ancient fire pathways. These burns would not fight the land, they would prepare it. They would not erase the forest, they would protect it. One idea led to another, and soon science and tradition were no longer standing opposite each other. Instead, they were joining hands. As a result, the town changed. A fast, inspiring montage swept across the screen. Indigenous rangers prepared cool burns with steady, practiced movements. Scientists worked under mobile field tents, studying satellite data and weather patterns. Community volunteers, farmers, students, teachers, and elders joined in training sessions, learning to read smoke, soil, and wind the way Jarra had learned as a child.
Inside a temporary operations center, Maya projected high-resolution satellite imagery onto a digital tablet.
Beside her, Jarra traced invisible lines of knowledge over the screen: animal corridors, natural fire breaks, seasonal moisture zones, and places where the land could breathe easiest. As he spoke, glowing pathways appeared in Maya's data, merging with her maps until the display shimmered like a constellation of solutions. Two worlds were becoming one. The hybrid fire prevention plan was born, a living blueprint showing where cultural burns could interrupt future fire fronts before they became unstoppable. And when the final model glowed across the transparent screen, it looked less like a chart and more like a promise. Maya smiled, not with certainty, but with hope. Then the wind changed. The heat arrived before the flames did, a suffocating wave rolling in from the west. The horizon darkened, and then it ignited. A monstrous wind-driven fire erupted across the valley and raced toward the town faster than anyone had expected. Sirens screamed, families hurried to pack their cars, fire crews scrambled into position, while the sky turned from orange to red to a choking twilight. Panic trembled through the streets. Maya and Jarra stood with the firefighters, watching the beast tear through the valley. It charged forward with open jaws, devouring trees, fences, and dry scrub in its path. Embers whipped through the air like furious wasps. The town braced itself for another disaster, another devastating loss. But then, the fire reached the culturally burned corridor, and everything changed. The inferno hesitated. Flames that had towered like walls suddenly shrank to knee height. Instead of sprinting, they crawled. The roar softened into a hiss. The speed dropped dramatically as the fire met patchworks of cool burns and cleared fuel. It had less to feed on, and because of that, it lost its power. The firefighters moved in quickly. For the first time in years, they were not overwhelmed. They were in control. Within hours, the blaze was contained. Maya stared at the blackened line where the wildfire had stopped, her eyes filling, not from smoke, but from relief. "Your ancestors saved this town," she whispered. Jarra knelt and pressed his hand to the warm earth. "It was the land," he said softly. "We just remembered to listen." Behind them, the community gathered in stunned silence. Some cried, others simply held each other. All of them understood now that the land had spoken, and this time humanity had answered correctly. In the weeks that followed, the town no longer felt like a graveyard. Tiny green shoots pushed through the blackened soil, defiant and alive. Birds returned first, calling across the recovering forest, and then the animals followed, cautiously at first, then more confidently. The community began rebuilding not only homes, but trust. Children gathered around elders and firefighters, learning that fire could heal as well as destroy. Maya and Jarra held workshops together, teaching how cool burns worked, how to read wind patterns, how to respect the seasons, and how to protect a place by understanding it instead of dominating it. Knowledge that once was fading now grew roots again. Meanwhile, in a government hall miles away, Maya presented the data: reduced fire intensity, slower spread rates, and successful containment in the treated zones. Officials leaned forward, listening differently now. The evidence was clear. A new path forward existed, and it was built not on division, but on partnership. Back in town, artists repainted the cracked mural. What had once been a symbol of fracture became a vibrant picture of unity, people standing with fire instead of against it, guiding it gently across the earth with wisdom and care. And as the forest began to breathe again, so did the community. Finally, one late afternoon, Jarra walked slowly through the recovering bush. His fingertips brushed the soft leaves of new growth, and the land beneath him felt different now, still marked by scars, yet alive. The charcoal memories remained, but green shoots were rising through them, determined and bright. He paused, looked out over the forest, and whispered the words his grandfather would have loved to hear. Fire is neither friend nor enemy. It becomes what we teach it to be. And this time, the land listened.